bound and down, loaded up and trucking. Are we gonna do what they say can't be done? We've got a long way to go.
Aaron Dykes, during the break, ran in and said, yeah, I was reading Sutton's book, and then I looked at it online. You've got the Brown Brother Harriman's building, which also funded Hitler. And here in the U.S., it's surrounded by all the Russian embassies and government facilities. And that's because the Russians, this was admitted at the time, were funded by the United States during Stalin's time. Now, Hitler was a little different. They funded him, told him he was going to have Western support to invade other countries, then set him up and brought him down. But the Russian system is definitely a staged event up until the 1980s and 90s, probably still staged. But you were getting into Anthony-Sutton, Charlotte-Iserbyte. Once he got the Skull and Bones membership list from you, the official internal list, he said he was blown away. Please continue.
Yeah, well, he just said he went and had copies made, you know, at Kinko's or something, and then he put it all out on the dining room table, and he looked, and he said it was the first time that he understood completely what had happened, and that this was the entity, whatever you want to call it, the organization, the order, the fraternity, the whatever, that was responsible for the direction that our country was moving in, militarily, corporate-wise, and education. He saw it. And so he was thrilled. And actually, I have to give Tony credit for not blowing the whistle. I didn't ask him not to. He just felt that it wasn't right for him to identify me. You know, my dad was, by that time, he was gone. So I had no problem with that. But Tony just felt that it wasn't right, and I appreciated that. So anyway, it was very sad that he passed away, by the way, and I've always wondered about that.
He was a real gentleman. I tried to interview him. I interviewed him once, and then I tried to interview him a few years later, I guess back in '99, and he sent me, it was like 1 week before he died. Because I remember hearing like 2 weeks later he just died, and I got a kind email saying, I appreciate your work, Mr. Jones. I'd love to come on. I'm too ill. And then he dies a week later. I mean, that's a classy guy.
Well, I don't even know that he was that ill. I think he was ill. He had something wrong with, you know, that inner ear business.
Yeah.
And that was why I couldn't meet with him way back then. I wanted to meet with him when I was in California. And he couldn't because of that. But he told me, he said, other than that, Charlotte, I'm fine. And so I believe, you know, let's talk, we're really getting into conspiracy stuff here. I don't know why Anthony-Sutton died. I have no idea. I mean, of course, anybody can die. He could have had a heart attack. But I did talk to someone who was very close to him, and the feeling I got was that it was not, there were definitely questions about Anthony-Sutton's passing.
I may have talked to him right after he'd been poisoned then, because he said, I'm not feeling well. I can't. Come on. He was literally, it was weird. It was like that with Gary Webb, who wrote the Dark Alliance series about the CIA drug dealing. He sent me this disc that was all his material and said, you have a website, put it up. And then he called back 6 months later and he said, you never put it up. And I said, this was like in '98 or something. I said, well, I'm not very technical. I'm going to try. And we barely had InfoWars up working well then. And then I called him back. We had put up a lot of it. And he said, I'm not ready to come on yet. This is a few years later. He said, I'm writing the book, though, that's going to blow him out of the water. And he was about to come out with that book when they shot him twice in the head. And then
well, they don't have any problem doing these things, as most of your listeners know. You know, the wonderful the transcript of the Reese Committee hearings, the 3,000 pages that we have up on Samuel's website. That's the investigation of the tax-exempt foundations, 1953. And I understand from I think it's Dan Monteith. Well, I found out from Bob Goldsboro. I bought the copy of it from Bob Goldsboro, Robert Goldsboro, but I didn't pay. I paid $3,000 for it. But I understand that Goldsboro was offered any amount of money to get that one copy. This is a foundation. One of the minions said, "We will pay you anything you want." And Goldsboro said, "No." Good for him, right? And then about 15 years later, I knew Goldsboro well. I said, gee, Bob, really? I mean, you're just sitting with that thing. We want to put it up on the Internet. And so he sold it to me for very little, basically, huh? So the point is this, that these people really mean business. I mean, when they're willing to pay anything for 3,000 pages of congressional testimony, because, of course, after the hearings were shut down, they went around the country and bought up all the copies that were in the libraries, huh? So anyway,
well, let's continue with Skull and Bones, one of the key globalist organizations, and what their master plan is. More about your family. Aaron's got some questions as well. Charlotte, let's move quick now. You're very gracious to be joining us here. You were getting into what Anthony Sutton had discovered, what Skull and Bones is, what their master plan is, how they build up the Muslim enemy that they really secretly control from the top. The low levels don't know it. They create the Nazi threat by funding it. They create the Soviet, which is on record now. They create the fake global warming, which is just made up to sell their takeover. They claim they're fixing education when really they're trying to destroy it. I mean, they are the masters of this Hegelian dialectic. And what is in these documents and what has been discovered is German sciences of brainwashing to, as you know, to create Hessian brainwashed soldiers for sale worldwide. That technology spread through Skull and Bones. I mean, quantify what Skull and Bones is from your deep research and what Sutton discovered. Then Aaron's got some points.
Well, the order, I do believe that it is connected with the Illuminati. And there is some pretty sound research that connects them. It is a German order. There's no question about that. I know that. And it's the elite. Everybody knows a lot of this stuff. The elite, how many families, 200 families or whatever, more perhaps, in the country who have enough money and have been very carefully educated, whether they're Bones or even some other fraternities that are close to Bones. But I think one of the best quotes is very simple. It's right in the book cover on Sutton's book. And the reason I like it is because the guy that they're talking about, E.O. Matheson, who was Skull and Bones 1923, was a friend of my father's. I don't think they were very good friends because my father wasn't deeply involved, but my father knew him and had mentioned him. And this is what is right on the cover of the book. It says, quote, this is from E.O. Matheson, Skull and Bones 1923, to Donald Ogden Stewart, an earlier Skull and Bones year, 1916, about Matheson's, Maddie, they call him, upcoming appearance before the House Committee on Un-American Activities. So this is fascinating. Quote, as long as we have somebody from Bones who can bring pressure on the committee, I should think we'd be all right. Now that tells you the power of someone from Bones. Now that's Matheson talking to another Bones character. And I knew Matheson's daughter. She lived in Camden when I was on the local school board going up against all these values-destroying programs. And she was from a very elite lady, and she was the daughter of Matheson. And I went to a Christmas party one evening, and of course everybody was beating up on me then because I supported grammar, things like that, right? And I didn't like values-destroying programs. But she cornered me at this Christmas party and really beat up on me about my opposition to what was going on in the schools. I was on the school board. And I was so upset that I started to cry. Because it was in public that she was doing that. And so I just put my coat on. It was a snowy night. The moon was out and all. And I walked home. And I never forgot that because that was a daughter of an important person in the order. That's the one that I just quoted, huh? So she fell for all the garbage. I didn't. Although my father was never like him. My dad would never have been involved in in hearings in Congress and lying and all this stuff. So,
but your dad, as he was dying, did talk about Bohemian Grove and
well, my dad, I want to correct you on this, Alex. My dad was not a member of Bohemian Grove. He was invited once.
Sure, okay.
By Edwin Blair, who was a very close friend of his. I think, they were roommates, but very close.
Sure, sorry, I got confused by that. But, I mean, to be specific, your dad did say that he didn't like it.
He went because he was invited. He went and spent 10 days or something out there, and he came home, and he said it was very lush, very elegant, very interesting lectures and all, but he would never go back. He said that. I will never go back. So that was dead. Now, I can defend my father. I cannot really defend my grandfather that much, although I loved him, and he was a mining engineer. And he was very prominent, and he was probably one of the top in the world in the late 1890s.
Wasn't Harding a mining engineer, too?
What's that?
Harding, President Harding.
I don't know.
But I mean, to be specific here, though, Charlotte, I'm not saying your dad was a bad guy. He was a great guy, obviously, and through his daughter, this information comes to us as well. I just, going back into memory, I remember you saying that your dad said, basically that he disagreed with it all now and that he didn't like it.
What he said, he really didn't say that. He never got that close to what it all was. He said to me a week before he died, because I was really on my white horse. My horse very dirty now, huh? But I was on my white horse from 1970 to right now, and he knew what I was doing. And he said before he died, Char, if I had more time, I'd help you. And so, yeah, I think that he was a mayor of 3 towns on Long Island and in New Jersey. He was an Episcopalian. He went to church. He was a good Christian, all that. Now, my grandfather was a Mason. My grandfather came from Pennsylvania. He was the one that I do believe, please, Grandpa, forgive me. He's the one who was very close to the Fabians in South Africa. He was out there. He opened up the gold mines in the late 1880s in Johannesburg. And I had a picture of him with Sir A. Bailey. I can't find that picture. I don't know where it is. But anyway, Grandpa...
So that's the Cecil Rhodes connection right there.
Absolutely. So Grandpa really was involved, I think. But, on the other hand, he was my grandfather, and he was very dear to me, and I loved him, and he was not a snob. That's very interesting. Grandpa was the last person on earth you'd call a snob, and my father, too. The whole family's always been very, we just sort of get along with everybody, no matter who.
Charlotte, and we're not here to put your family on trial for your dad and grandfather being Skull and Bones members.
No, but I just want to make the point here that they're not all what people think they are. It's really interesting. I mean, I knew my father's best friends. They were all in his wedding. When a Skull and Bones guy gets married, all the ushers are the members of Skull and Bones in that class. And then from that time on, you see them all the time. They were visiting the house. They were my parents' best friends and their wives. Huh? And you never would have known what the basic, what their goals were. There was one who I remember in particular, my sister's father, godfather, huh? And very nice. And he, believe it or not, was the founder of the Hemlock Society,
which pushes suicide.
Did you hear me? Well, yeah. This sort of thing really did surprise me.
Well, let's talk about what it is, because from Sutton's research, the info we've got, it is certainly a death cult, a Germanic death cult, and its mainline books have now been written clearly. You've got the Illuminati going on in Germany at the time. It's founded 1832, German money, British money.